Hi, my name is Amber. Welcome back to my channel, Books and Beaches. So today I am here to talk about the books that I read for the 5-star predictions that I was able to team up with Lindsay from Lindsay's Little Library and Sarah from Sarah's Nightstand. So we were supposed to choose 3 books that we thought were going to be 5 stars and then obviously come back to you now 2 months later and let you know what we thought of them. So we each did it slightly differently. We wanted to focus on book of the month, but I know Sarah had kind of like pre-picked her books. Lindsay was doing a little bit of a try a chapter kind of thing, and I had picked like this whole stack of books that's sitting right behind me and let you all help me pick. And so I went through all those comments, kind of tallied it up. It was very close in a couple situations. So I wasn't exactly 100% sure what I was going to read. And, good thing because March ended up being a little whatever. And so I read actually, I think the majority of these the end of March and then now here in April. So I am here to, one, confirm with you which books I did pick and then what I thought of them. So the very first one that I picked up, I think this was the order that I read them in. The first one ended up being The Wedding People. And this is the one I was hoping a lot of people would vote for, and that I was pretty sure no matter what I was probably going to pick because there was so much hype around this book. And I enjoyed it. It's not to say that I didn't. I did choose to tandem read this. I was listening to the audio along with reading it. And so first things first, if you don't know the premise, we have a woman who ends up at this destination hotel, and her plan is to, unalive herself, being safe on the internet. And she turns out to be the only person at this hotel that isn't part of this wedding party. And she becomes friends per se with the bride. And the bride is absolutely appalled that she's there. She's she has no idea, how she got to make a reservation. She's actually got one of the best rooms in the hotel, so the bride doesn't understand why she gets the better view over the bride, etc. And there are a lot of shenanigans that go from there. Now, I liked the very interesting connection that our main character, and of course I can't remember her name, Phoebe, has with our bride. And our bride's name was, oh gosh. This is what happens when I read it not too long ago. I'm terrible with names. So, I don't know. I can't even remember. So, I think it might have been Lila. But they had a very interesting, relationship for just meeting each other. But there were times where they both drove me absolutely crazy. And I just was super frustrated with that. And then there were other times, and this could have been more of an audiobook thing for me, but every time we had dialogue, I constantly felt like it was saying, she said, they said, he said, and it was just so repetitive. And I think in some of the scenes here where we get a lot of the wedding party and they're having conversations, for some reason, it was just grinding my gears how the dialogue was written. And so maybe had I not been tandem reading it and just reading it physically, I wouldn't have noticed that as much. But in the audiobook, it drove me absolutely crazy. So like I said, I enjoyed it. I liked where the story went. So I ended up giving this one a 4, which is still a great rating and probably the rating that most of my books have gotten this year. So, not terrible by any means, but not a full 5 stars. And I would say my review is probably not as good as most everybody else's. So there's that. After that, I picked up the thriller of the pile. And this was one that I want to say the votes were really close on. So, it could have gone both ways. But I ended up picking up First Lie Wins by Ashley Elston. And I loved this. Without even, trying to pretend, this was a 5-star for me. Which I come to find out after reading reviews is kind of not a controversial opinion by any means, but there are a lot of people that didn't like this. We meet Evie Porter, and she seemingly kind of has it all, a great guy, a great place to live, she's got a job, but we learn not that she's undercover necessarily, but she is living this persona working for her employer, this unknown Mr. Smith. Now, she doesn't know who Mr. Smith is. She just does what he tells her to do. And it always has some sort of like end game. There's always a reason why Mr. Smith wants her to interact with the people that she does. And so we are getting kind of that main timeline story where, she runs into somebody that she never ever thought she would run into. And I don't want to say too much about that because it could be considered a spoiler. But we're also getting chapters flashing back to all of the other personas that she's had since her first interaction with this Mr. Smith. And I loved the wild ride. I loved kind of bouncing back and forth between those timelines. I never knew what to expect in the current timeline. And then you're also seeing like how those old timelines are connecting to the most current one. And yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. And if I'm not mistaken, I think this might be... Oh, it's her first adult debut. I was like, I thought it was a debut. She had written YA before this. So I'm looking forward to like what else she might come out with, especially if they are thrillers, because I was hooked the entire time. So 5 stars for sure on that one. And then the last book that ended up winning all of your votes, so thank you everyone who gave me, which 3 books I should pick, ended up being The Paradise Problem by Christina Lauren. Now, first of all, I think I picked this up from Book of the Month just because of the cover alone. I love it. This was a nice, I don't want to say palette cleanser, but it was something different compared to the other 2 books. Because, this one is your true Christina Lauren, like, romance. We have our 2 main characters, and like I said, names with me, Anna and Liam, but she calls him West because that's part of his last name, which is really interesting. West is actually my mom's maiden name, so, but they get married to save money on college housing, which probably technically illegal, but they do it anyways, and they are legally married. And at the end of their arrangement, they consider themselves broken up. They're not together anymore until like 5 years later. Liam's family is this like nationwide grocery chain owner, and his sister's getting married on a private island, and his parents still think he's married, and they just assume they've never met his wife because she's busy training to be a doctor. In reality, our main character, Anna, is an artist, not in med school at all. And he basically has to say like, hey, will you come to this island with me and pretend to be my wife with my family because I need it in order to get my inheritance. And they go through some pretty interesting things. I loved the private island setting. You get, that angst of being like irritated with family and the things that, his parents do. She has a best friend that's very, very funny. She has an amazing relationship with her own father. And so you're seeing those relationships. So I think Christina Lauren did a great job at building that world and those scenes. Now, do I think it was a little predictable? Sure. I mean, we all know where like a fake dating trope is probably going to go. And I've forgotten because it's been a while since I read a Christina Lauren book. It was a little bit steamier than I expected. Now, people that read a lot of like steam or smut probably look at this and say, Amber, this is nothing. But I guess I'm not used to always that happening. And I was talking to a coworker, I said, I think the reason it shocks me is I'm just not used to having such bold vocabulary to describe things. But the more I look at my romance reading, the more I say, I think I am more of not a closed door person, but maybe a fade to black person. That's probably right where my romance sits. But for the most part, I enjoyed this one. Like I said, it was fairly predictable. I think I ended up giving it like a 3.75, which is a joke in my book club, I know. Because I liked it and it was enjoyable. I think a lot of people would enjoy this. Not a 5-star like I was hoping. I think, my 1 5-star Christina Lauren is always going to be, and I shouldn't say this, Love in Other Words, because love that book. I have 2 copies of that book because I had to have both covers. So didn't win up to that Christina Lauren because I'm not going to necessarily, pair it compared to these ones, but it was good in its own right. So those are the 3 books that I read for this round of 5-star predictions. I am so thankful to Lindsay and Sarah for inviting me to join them. Don't forget to check out their videos today to see what 3 books they read and what they thought of them. I will make sure to link their channels, in the description below. But as always, if you like this video, feel free to like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.